The Tribal Health and Human Services Department of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribes is proud to present Good Medicine, a program dedicated to the wellness of the Flathead Nation. The mission is summarized quite simply: a healthier people, a stronger nation. We will strive to make Good Medicine a reliable source of ideas and information about health issues so that everyone can make informed decisions about their own lifestyle and health care. You will meet health professionals, tribal government and spiritual leaders, and interesting people from the tribal community discussing important health issues that profoundly affect us all.
Hello, this is Good Medicine. My name is Larry Pitts, your host. Today we have with us Patte Doran, our nutritionist for Tribal Health. We have Paul Coates with us also today, our nurse practitioner. Today we're going to be going over nutritional questions on our weight management programs, and so I'm happy to have both you guys here.
Happy
you want to say hello to anybody out there?
Hello.
All right. Well, to get started today, guys, and gals, what do we consider a healthy weight, Patte?
Well, they used to talk about healthy weights in terms of ideal body weights, and I guess I'm glad they're getting away from that. What that did, it kind of said if you were like 5'4", you were supposed to weigh 120 pounds. They've kind of put people in this little box, and they've gotten away from that. And anymore, what's considered a healthy weight is where someone can maintain their health, where they feel good, and where they feel good about themselves. And that's going to be something different for everybody. I know last week Paul talked about having a body composition done, and that's a good way of determining a healthy weight. But I think it's good that we've gotten away from these little boxes.
All right. So Paul, what do you think a healthy weight is?
From a medical point of view, what you want to be is less than 30% over your ideal body weight. And the ideal body weight are the little boxes that Patte was talking about. And you've probably seen these little boxes in the National Enquirer or all the different things that are at the grocery store, where they just take your height and your weight and say that this is what your ideal should be. Those little boxes can be used. If you're about 30% over that, then you're probably at a not healthy weight. And what the research shows is that over that 30% body weight, then you start getting into other health problems.
Okay. So in other words, nutritionists can work with the medical field. I mean, this is not point counterpoint. You guys are in agreement with this kind of stuff?
You need to work together. It's not just overweight is just a problem of what you eat, what type of exercise. It involves all different aspects.
So it's a network, basically.
Yeah, we need to all work together with that.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Weight is not, there's not any single factor that goes into weight management. It's a complex of a lot of things that end up lacing together. And nutrition and eating habits, that's one of the most important parts of all of this. And so I'm really glad that Patte's here to work with and to help with today's show too.
All right, that's great. Now guys, let's go to our next question. Why don't you think diets really work?
Well, diets, there's several reasons actually. First of all, diets are real negative. They're set up for people to fail. And what happens, you know, think about yourself. If somebody tells you you can't have something or can't do something, what's your first reaction?
I want it.
You want it. And that's the same way with diets. You have to be very, very rigid. They talk about all the things you can't do, all the things you can't have. And being human, they're impossible for people to stick to, and they're not necessarily healthy either. Some diets that are out there, and we can go to a grocery store and there's I don't know how many on the shelves. A lot of them really restrict calories too much, you know, so that the body kind of sets itself up where it starts burning muscle tissue rather than fat. Where it breaks down muscle tissue for energy. And that's a situation you don't want to get into. But I think a lot of it is, they're just so negative. Okay. You know, they're set up, they fail, and then the person feels like a failure. Whereas it's the diet, it can't work.
But isn't it sort of true, when I go to the grocery store and I'm walking down the aisles, I see diet this, I see light that. I mean, we're inundated with diet around us. How do we deal with that? Paul?
I think that what Patty was talking to about the psychology of it all, when somebody is heavy or overweight, you feel bad enough about that to begin with. And to go into this state of mind where you start feeling like you're deprived, I can't eat this, I can't eat that, I can't eat that, it just sets you up for this huge craving of exactly what you shouldn't be eating in there, or what's not healthy for you to eat. And so I think the best way to do it is with a balanced approach. You want to eat a little bit of what you want, and I think the big trick is not going overboard on those unhealthy foods.
Well, the other thing with diets, they're short term. You go on a diet and you can't wait to get off of it. I mean, that's pretty typical. And what we need to look at, weight management is long term. People need to look at things they can do over the long haul, not just for 6 weeks, 6 months, but for a lifetime.
Not a New Year's resolution, in other words.
That's right.
All right, okay. How fast, Patty, do you think a person should really lose weight? I mean, can you lose, I was in the grocery store the other day, and they were talking about a program where, people lose 20 pounds in the first week, and if I lost 20 pounds, there wouldn't be anything left of me.
Right. You can lose weight. 20 pounds is a bit much, but what happens when you lose weight really quickly, you end up again losing muscle and losing water, and that accounts for a lot of the fast weight loss. What is helpful, what is recommended for a healthy weight loss is between 1/2 pound to 2 pounds a week. And I know to people listening that's going to sound really, really slow, but if you think about it, the weight doesn't come on overnight. It's a gradual process, and it takes, for those who like to do a little math, it takes 3,500 extra calories to gain a pound. It takes minus that many to lose a pound. So, on those diets that guarantee, fast weight loss, what you're losing, and you'll lose water, and you will, again, lose some muscle, but what you really want to lose is the fat.
Well, how many calories in a person's diet in a day?
They use 2,000 calories as kind of a reference diet, and it varies so much. Somebody who's real active can take in a lot more than somebody who's not. When we're talking about diets, some of the calorie restrictions, I don't like to see women go below 1,200 calories, and I don't like men to go below about 1,500 calories, because if they go too low, they're not going to be able to get the nutrients that they need. There's a lot of stuff in food that keeps us healthy. And if you cut it too much, you just can't get them.
Well, Paul, last week when we were talking, I sort of, built you up as being sort of our program manager of the weight program. So what are you looking for in the program as far as how much weight are you looking for people to be successful in our weight management program?
Well, I start getting upset with people if they lose much more than 2 pounds a week.
More than?
More than. Okay. People come on to a weight management program or get on a diet and they want to just crash and lose that weight quickly. And I understand the urge to do that. My experience has been the people that lose weight quickly not only burn muscle, like Patty was saying, but they set themselves up to gain that weight back really fast, and in fact, they usually not only gain the weight they lost, but they add on extra weight after that. So the slow burn approach is really what I go for and what I look for.
And the problem is, too, if they lose the weight too quickly, as we talked about, they lose muscle, and when they gain it back, it comes back as fat. So they end up being less healthy than they started.
Really?
Yeah, and that's a real concern.
So you're sort of into this yo-yo effect that you go down, you come back faster than you went down.
And then you're not as healthy.
And not as healthy.
If you do that a few times, it's real detrimental.
So is losing weight healthy?
If you're overweight, it's healthy. If you're not overweight or in that 30% over your ideal weight range, it can be really detrimental. It can not only cause you to lose muscle, but it can affect your metabolism. If we were to go on a crash type diet, our bodies would think, oh my gosh, there's a famine in the land. I'm going to try and hold on to every little bit of food that comes my way. So what starts off in an effort to lose weight by a crash fasting type of a diet actually ends up setting you up for maybe the rest of your life to have a much slower metabolism, a metabolism that's going to tell the rest of your body to hold on to every calorie that you can get, because who knows, tomorrow there might not be any more.
And that's one of the problems with the really low calorie diets, is that's what happens. The body, our bodies are made for survival. And the body thinks it's being starved to death, so it just hangs on and it just slows down how fast it burns those calories.
So the system shuts down.
Slows down. Doesn't shut down all the way, but it slows down. And I guess I'd like to mention too that, especially for young women, they always used to say you can't be too thin. Well, you can be too thin, and there's a growing concern here and pretty much across the nation with eating disorders or people not eating enough, especially young women trying to be too thin. So that is a real concern also.
And especially with the young women, like Patty's talking about, if you aren't getting enough calories to keep your system going well, then that starts to affect the menstrual periods. Women will lose their menstrual periods, and the long-term effects of that is really hard to say. When it gets to that point, then there's some serious health problems going on.
Can there be a problem with athletics in this direction?
I think there can be. I think the old way of thinking with keeping the women really thin, gymnastics is one. There's been some recent information about they weren't always eating real healthy, and some of their practices. Wrestling, when they have them sweat to lose the weight, to make weight, that's not a real healthy practice either. So I think that I think there can be a balance.
I agree.
So again, it always seems like every time we're talking about subjects, in good medicine here, it seems like we're always talking about balance. And I think that's probably something that we need to really concentrate on, maybe in a future show, is the balances of life.
Yeah, and I think that's extremely important with weight management.
As you go into different circles, as you listen to different programs on TV, it seems like every time, especially this time of the year, you're always hearing about fat. The talk is always fat. What about that?
What about fat? Yeah, you're right. It's in the headlines all the time. Most of us have too much of it, and I think this will be a good time to bring out one of my toys. This is, or represents, this isn't real. This represents
Thank you.
5 pounds of fat. On most people, it's not in one big clump like this, but it's spread out throughout the body. Fat, they talk about too, and I think Paul talked about this last time, about where the fat is distributed, the pear or the apple. Women tend to carry it lower and some in our hips and thighs. Men generally tend to carry it more around the waistline. And the reason that women carry it lower is because of hormonal thing. Estrogen is one of them, and because we have babies, it's again a survival factor. And what they find is that people who carry it more around their chest area, waistline area, have higher health risks associated with that, because the fat can get in there around vital organs.
Something I'd like to say about fat is this glob of fat here, this 5 pounds of fat, is made up of billions of little fat cells. And each one of those little fat cells needs blood going into it in order to stay alive. And when you start looking at what's the big deal about fat and what are the health risks that go along with fat, I would imagine that 5 pounds of fat here is going to require several miles of blood vessels to keep all of this alive if you were to string it all out.
I believe it's 1 mile per pound. I think is what I have read.
So with 5 pounds of fat, we're looking at 5 miles of pipe that blood has to be pushed through. And what pushes that blood through the 5 miles of pipe? It's your heart. And so I don't know if anybody has messed around with little aquarium pumps or little water pumps or things like that, but it takes a lot of energy to push fluid through 5 miles of tubing, whatever kind of tubing you got. And so every 5 pounds is just going to put that much more demand on the heart. And over a long period of time, that's going to make for a lot of extra work for your heart. And if you're carrying around 40 pounds of extra fat.
Wow,
this is 5 pounds. Imagine this multiplied by 8 of these globs going around, 40 pounds of extra fat. That would be how many miles of extra blood vessels? It all adds up to a huge amount of work for the heart. And if we were going to carry this around, and especially if we're going to carry 8 of these around, 40 pounds, that's going to be a lot of extra weight on your knees, on your back, on all of your joints. And so it may sound like just not that big a deal at first. Oh, I'm 5, 10, 15, 40 pounds overweight, but over time that all adds up as a big burden on the body.
Wow. Guys, we're going to take a short break here for our next segment of what we call Let's Ask Marjorie. So we're going to take a break right now. We'll be back with Paul and Patty in a few minutes. Thank you. Welcome to this week's segment of Let's Ask Marjorie. This week's question for Marjorie is going to be, I've heard a lot of talk that social service program has been moved from Ronan to St. Ignatius, and what I want to know, Marjorie, is what is the reason for this?
The change at social services started before I arrived. I've been the director for tribal health and social services since November 1st, and there are numerous reasons for the move. One of them is that we would like to provide reservation-wide services, and so we'll be headquartered out of the tribal health building in St. Ignatius. But Joe Dupuy, the tribal administrator, has been discussing with us the need to provide services in the community, so we're looking at how we can do that in some manner, maybe someone visiting each community once a month or something like that. But the need to move social services to St. Ignatius is also because we all need to work together, and we all need to work together more efficiently, and so it helps when one hand knows what the other hand is doing. And when we do that, I believe that it will be easier for us to provide services to all of the people. I think there are communities on the reservation that receive less services. Probably the most neglected is Hot Springs, and then probably second is Arley and Dixon. And so the cost of the move is being balanced between the health program, social services, and Head Start. We have far too much floor space given to administration, and so we're hoping to provide more of the buildings for direct provider services, and Head Start will take over the buildings that social services is vacating. And so I believe it's a positive move. I believe that we'll all benefit from it, and I hope everybody will be happy with the services that we're able to provide, say 5-6 months down the road. It will take us some time to get organized.
We're back. We're back with Paul Coates and Patty Doran, and we're talking the rest of the program. We're talking about the nutritional questions as far as how fat affects our lives. My next question for you, Patty, is fat always bad?
Well, we can talk about that in two different ways. That the fat we have on our body, we do need some fat. It serves a lot of important functions in the body. The problem is that most of us have too much fat. And as far as fat and food, again, we do need some. One of the things it does is helps keep our skin nice, helps keep our hair nice. Plus, it's involved, like I said, in a lot of the body processes. Again, we tend to take in too much fat. And before the break, we were talking about, you see about fat all over the place. Fat-free this, fat-free that. One of the reasons they're talking so much about fat is that we get calories from 3 places in food: fat, protein, and carbohydrate foods. fat, and food is always measured in grams. That's a weight measurement. And to most people, if you look on a label, you see it says so many grams of fat, it doesn't mean a thing. What a gram looks like is about the size of a small paper clip. Now, if this is fat, this paper clip has 9 calories for every gram. Okay? If it's a carbohydrate like a bread or a cereal, or a protein such as a really lean meat, it has 4 calories per paper clip. So the fat calories add up twice as fast. I almost said twice as fat. They add up twice as fast. So that's one reason that we get concerned about that. The average person, in terms of how much fat they eat, is about 100 grams a day. That's equal to taking a stick of butter and eating it. What we need is half that, or maybe not even that much, but no more than about half that much. So if you can kind of envision that stick of butter. And I just lost my...
Well, Paul's hair looks really nice. So is he getting the right amount of fat in his diet?
Well, that's really hard to tell. What the recommendation is to have no more than about 30% of your calories from fat, and for most people that translates into about 50 grams.
Okay.
And
so 50 of those paper clips.
50 of these paper clips, yeah. And we were talking a little bit at the break about the different kinds of fat. They usually talk about, there's 2 basic general categories: saturated fat and unsaturated fat. Saturated fat comes from animals. Regular butter, the fat that's in meat, whole milk. That's the kind that's hardest on your heart. That's what works to help clog up your arteries. The unsaturated fat are things that are usually liquid at room temperature: corn oil, safflower oil, things like that. And they both have the same amount of calories, but the animal fat or saturated fat is harder on the heart than the other fats are.
Maybe one way to think of it's nice that we have the new labels on the food now, because it does break down how much is fat, how much is saturated, how much is unsaturated fat, and reading labels is a really good idea. It's still confusing to figure out saturated, unsaturated, polyunsaturated, all of these different categories that are in there. And I really like what Patty had to say about the deal about room temperature. If the fat is solid at room temperature, it's probably not good for you in there. And that's a fairly easy, commonsensical way of telling whether the fat that you're eating is healthy kinds of fat or the less healthy type of fat.
So even margarines, they're solid at room temperature.
Yeah, the tub margarines are healthier.
Are healthier
than the stick margarines are.
Okay. Good. Is exercise important for weight management?
Extremely important. You were talking earlier about the balance. Exercise, one of the things, one of the big advantages that exercise has is that it helps the body speed up its metabolism, which means it helps it burn the fat better. As we get older, and I'm talking about 30, I'm not talking very old here, our metabolism slows down. How fast we burn calories slow down. The only thing that they found for sure to help keep that from happening is exercise. You can go to the store and you'll see these on these magazines about a new pill being discovered and all of this. Up to this point, exercise is the only thing that they've proven that will do that. Plus, it makes people feel good.
What about skipping meals? Good idea?
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea. A lot of people get into trouble that way. They think they're saving calories by skipping meals, and what happens is at night the body slows down. It's resting. How we burn calories slows down also. By eating something in the morning, it's kind of like jump-starting a car. You're getting yourself going, you start burning calories better for the whole day. The other problem that happens when people skip meals is lots of times when they start eating, they're really, really hungry, and they overeat. It takes the brain 20 minutes to know the stomach's full, and if you're really hungry, you tend to eat really fast. And you're overfull by the time you realize you're not hungry anymore.
I've heard you talk before, Patty, about skippers and stuffers, and what was the third one? Seemed like there was skippers and stuffers and some other kind of eating pattern. What I've noticed is that the people that tend to be meal skippers also tend to be stuffers later on in the day.
Kind of goes hand in hand. You know, the best is to try to eat at least 3 times a day, maybe even 4 or 5 smaller meals or snack. They've done some research and they've taken the same amount of calories, spread it out over 1 or 2 meals, and people gain weight.
Wow.
Spread it out over 3, people stay about the same. Over 4 or 5 small meals and snacks, and they lose weight. And if you think about it, it makes sense because taking in small amounts allows the body to burn it off. Whereas if you take in a lot all at once, and usually people skip breakfast and or lunch, and then at dinner time they just kind of eat on in through the evening, and they're taking all those calories to bed when their body slows down.
I feel like you're talking about me. It's so common for me to get up, power down some coffee, skip breakfast, barely squeeze in something for lunch, and then by the time I get home from work, I am starving, and I just start eating, and I don't stop until that bowl of cereal right before bed.
And yet your hair still looks nice.
No, it's falling out all the time, Larry.
Patty, we're winding down right now. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to, why don't you give us a nutritional tip that the viewers might be able to take home with them tonight?
Eat breakfast? Actually, eat something in the morning, or get a glass of milk or a glass of juice, just to get something to get you going. If you're running out the door, grab a bagel or a muffin as you run out the door. If you have to eat it in the car on the way to work, that's better than not eating at all. Or if you can eat at your desk when you get to work.
All right, Paul, you got any nutritional tips for us?
Eat less fat.
Eat less fat. Guys, I want to thank you for being on Good Medicine today.
Thanks for having us.
You know, it's been great. It's been fun. I'd like to invite people to continue to watch our program. We are aired at Wednesday nights at 6 o'clock. We are on Thursdays at noon. We'll continue for the next 2 series with weight management. Thank you.
Good Medicine is your program. We hope you watch this and subsequent programs to stay informed about your health care. And we'd like to hear from you about how we're doing. Please direct any comments or suggestions you have to us. You can reach us at